Really appreciate you joining me. Delighted to welcome my next guest to the show, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab. Good morning to you. Good morning to you, Mr. Raab. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, the joys of tech.
Sorry.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. And now, you today are announcing that the UK is beginning their donations abroad of a huge number, 9 million vaccines to be donated bilaterally and offered to COVAX, the international scheme to help tackle COVID-19 abroad. Which countries are getting them?
So you're absolutely right. We feel confident enough in our domestic rollout that we can start to fulfil our pledge to get 100 million doses to the most vulnerable countries by next year. We know it's not just a moral compulsion for us. We want to help poorer countries. It's also in our interest because of all the interest in travel and trade that we share. The first 9 million batch will go to vulnerable countries in the Indo-Pacific like Laos, Cambodia, also key partners like Indonesia, but we're also supporting Commonwealth partners from Kenya to Jamaica. And I think it's part of demonstrating global Britain as a life-saving force for good in the world.
Well, yes, a lot of people are wondering about the priorities of which countries we should be helping out. And a lot of these vaccines, of course, for those that are going to be coming to the end of their own shelf life here in the UK. And so obviously still workable, but not needed here in the UK. And so it makes sense to make sure they go in someone else's arm. But should we not be prioritising all Commonwealth countries over any other business trading partners and keeping together that family of nations?
So, first of all, I think 80% of our donations will go to COVAX. They will prioritise according to need. Of course, much of that need will be in Commonwealth countries. 20% will go to any key partners, and we can use that to supplement with key Commonwealth partners who maybe don't get or don't qualify for whatever reasons for COVAX. But I would say if you look at the list, there's a huge number, a significant number of Commonwealth countries in the list, and I mentioned some of them, but there are others as well.
We're talking about prioritising based on need. One could argue that anyone, over the age of 60 or 70 in any other country around the world is more in need than, say, an 18-year-old here in the UK. And yet so much pressure is now on young people. We're told by one of your colleagues, Michael Gove, the Cabinet Office Minister, they're selfish if they don't go out and get the vaccine. Do you agree with him?
So we've got 70% of the adult population, double jabbed. And I think what I'd say is, look, this shows it works, it's successful, it's safe, indeed, it makes you safer. So I would say to anyone, particularly young people who haven't yet had it done or who have felt, for whatever reason, nervous about it, look, get the jab. It's good for you, it's in your own interest, but it's also in the interest of your family, your friends, and the country at large. So we want to get that percentage of double jabbed adults up beyond 70%. And the quicker we can do that, the more life gets closely back to normal.
So it's okay in your mind to threaten to withdraw freedoms of just fundamental basic freedoms that people have in our society, to separate people based on their medical history and what they're willing to show. That to you is justified in order to boost that uptake of the jab. Could we not try other methods, a bit more cajoling, a bit more persuasion, a bit more education, rather than the stick, a bit more of the carrot?
Oh, no, I totally agree with you. The emphasis has got to be on demonstrating this is safe, this is in your interest, this is the right thing to do. It's not going to harm you in any way. Far from it, it will be in your interest. That is the overwhelming thrust of what we should, of our message and what we want young people to hear and see. And I think you're right. It's a mixture of coaxing and cajoling to get those who haven't, for whatever reason yet, had the vaccine to get it. But I do think we can demonstrate now confidence in the system, having got 70% of the adult population double vaccinated. So hopefully we've got the right mix of tools. But I would say to any of your listeners, get the jab. It's in your interest. It's in your family's interest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm double jabbed. I didn't need to be coaxed or cajoled to do it. I know many of the young people in my office in their 20s and 30s, frankly, they're desperate to find somewhere where they can get their second jab as soon as they can, because they'd love to be able to travel and also they want to be able to protect other members of the community. But threatening to take away your right to go to a concert, a sports match, possibly even your right as a student to go into halls of residence or to go into a lecture hall, that's not coaxing or cajoling, that's a threat. threat. Is that appropriate in a modern liberal democracy? I know it's happening in France, in other countries, but one of the reasons I think that you and I were both Brexiteers, Mr. Raab, was because we believe in the relationship of the individual to the nation state. Doesn't a vaccine passport, which is being threatened by your government, doesn't that fundamentally completely break the relationship that we as individuals have with the British nation state?
Do you know what? I share many of your instincts, but I don't agree in this case. And I'll tell you why. First of all, at the moment, you can't go to those pop concerts and some of those things because we can't host them yet, precisely because the risk of transmission and the impact it might have on hospitals is too high. We want to get to a position where we open up those opportunities, if you like, sort of emancipate people further, particularly with those social things people want to do. And the question is whether we can achieve that for more people if we say, well, at least to begin with, we can only do it reliably and sure-footedly and safely if you've had a double vaccine to go there. And that is because we always, in this kind of situation, are balancing individual liberties with the liberties of everyone else. I don't think there's any escaping that formulation. I understand the way you put it, I think, in this case. And, of course, we know it's already happening. In relation to travel, it doesn't matter what the UK government says. I think if you want to travel to countries around the world, I think they will be insisting on double jabs.
Well, but we don't have a say. I mean, one of the reasons I got double jabbed, among the many reasons, was because I want to travel. It's a big part of my life. A lot of people are listening, a big part of their lives. But there's a very big difference between making a decision, OK, well, I'll go to this country. They require me to have a certain jab, whether it's yellow fever or COVID, and I'll agree to do it or not agree to do it. It's a very different thing when it's a relationship you have with your own state and your right as a citizen to go about your normal daily business. We're seeing some evidence that's coming out of the CDC in America that they believe that actually if you're double jabbed with the Delta variant specifically, which of course is pretty much all of our cases here in the UK and rapidly is spreading out as the dominant virus around Europe and America, that actually you are no less able to not pass it on than someone who is not double jabbed. The jab is mainly about, and was rolled out originally, to protect yourself rather than others, in which case that removes all the justification for a vaccine passport, doesn't it?
Well, I understand the way you put it, but I think the vaccine, and particularly the ones that we've licensed, do have an effect on transmission, and that does include in relation to variants. And of course, as the boosters come out, which we'll eventually need, they will be, I'm sure, refined to make them even more resilient against variants. So there's no escaping the basic conundrum, which is that while, particularly as we go through the autumn, where we know as we've exited step 4 of lockdown, with opening up almost all social restrictions, that we'll see an increase in cases. We've just got to make sure that we don't just weaken but sever the link between that and hospitalisations. I think if we got to that stage, we'd be in a totally different position. Until we have, we're going to need to have some safeguards to protect the country as a whole and the NHS as a whole. And I'm afraid this debate falls into that small category of things that we do need to consider, hopefully only temporarily. But I do think it's an important safeguard to make sure we go forward and not find ourselves stuttering or making steps back.
But interesting, you say hopefully only temporarily, and that's the big fear, isn't it? Just finally, we've got obviously the opening up from Monday of people coming from the United States and from the EU who are double jabbed. Difficult to verify a lot of those certificates because different states have different certificates and the like, and which jabs they've had. But how soon are we expecting the US to open up to UK citizens?
Well, first of all, it's not difficult in terms of the vaccines they've had. It'll only be in relation to the US FDA licensed vaccines, we regard as safe, in relation to the EU EMA licensed vaccines. In terms of verification from the US, there's a double lock, if you like, because it won't just be the certification, which you're right will be on paper, will be proof of address. In relation to when the US will open up, ultimately it's for them, but of course the President's discussed it with the Prime Minister, I've discussed it with my opposite number, Tony Blinken. We want that to happen as soon as possible with the US and indeed other countries. But I would just finally make this point. It's because we're taking this step forward with high trust partners that I'm already getting contacted by foreign ministers from other parts of the world saying, we want to get on your list of double vaccinated travel and can we talk about reciprocal arrangements? So I think it will be a safe way to make confident steps forward.
Okay, just finally, I've just come out of self-isolation at midnight last night after being pinged by Test and Trace after someone on my plane home Sunday week ago got a positive test. I've had 2 negative tests, have had COVID, double jabbed. No, I'm not at risk to nobody whatsoever, but I had 5 days stuck at home, unable to come out of my home. As of the 16th of August, I wouldn't even have to get a test with no symptoms, and I wouldn't have to self-isolate. Why would that be safe on the 16th of August, but it isn't safe today?
So we looked at this very carefully when we proceeded to step 4. I remember discussing it myself personally, and the case for just waiting a little bit longer to allow people double vaccinated to avoid self-isolation if they're contacted by NHS track and trace is simply to allow us to increase the double vaccination numbers over the course of that month. And we've done that successfully because we're now at over 70%. That gives us the extra reassurance. So we have had to wait a few extra weeks. I know you make the case. It's hugely frustrating. But all along, we've tried to proceed in an irreversible way. We want to make sustainable steps forward, not hauled back into any of these measures. And that's the justification. That's the rationale for it.
No lockdown, none of these restrictive measures ever again. It's over, yeah?
That's I don't think there's any hard, fast guarantees in a pandemic, but that is exactly what we're aiming for. And I think now, given the level of vaccination that we've got and the proportion of the population double jabbed, I think we're confident that that's the case.
Dominic Raab, Foreign Secretary, really appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed.